And so, Kevin, I'll hit you with this. Are these conversations with these athletes, of course, they're not going to be upfront about this necessarily, but is there a thread of something a little bit different because of the NIL component?
Yeah, I mean, I asked everybody about NIL in a series piece that hopefully I'll have out in the next week or two. And there certainly are considerations there for NIL, but what Ohio State has to do and has been doing is like, do you want the short-term payoff or the long-term windfall? And Ohio State has gotten better with how its NIL program is in the short term, but Ohio State also has quite the track record for players getting drafted and the deals that they sign and getting to second and third contracts where the real money can be. So you do have to kind of fight that last second bag drop that may happen from somebody else. And I'm not trying to sit there and say that makes it dirty or whatever. That's the rules. You can do whatever now, largely. I mean, it is the wild, wild west. But Ohio State really has been targeting guys in a lot of ways that, kind of at least understand the picture. Now, does that mean that it's going to work 100 out of 100 times? Absolutely not. It's recruiting still. At the end of the day, that's what it is. But, I think that you do have to kind of vet guys at the beginning. And if it's just going to be a who can drop the largest bag at the beginning, Ohio State probably moves on.
I would expect in most cases, if somebody gets a bag dropped at $700,000 and the next highest bid is $350,000, they're gone. That's a substantial difference. But I got to think that Ohio State still has a huge advantage because of all the things that we know about the program, in addition to the money, that if they're at least competitive in that range, that most players will see that and value the NFL development, the quest for a championship, and everything else that they bring to the table. And there's still other considerations to be made by these student athletes.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. And the thing is that whenever you think you kind of get your arms around what NIL looks like, it's just going to keep changing and changing and changing and changing. You're never going to be able to get this genie back in the bottle. You're never really going to fully understand because it's kid by kid. I mean, it's not even year by year. It's not like this is the year of the this and this is the year of the that. It's player by player that all of this is. So, again, it just makes the job of recruiting players that much more complicated and confusing. And those of us who have to try and track all of that news down, it ain't fun. It ain't fun, let me tell you.
Question for the room before we hit Steve with the camp schedule for this week. Have you guys honed in on what these NIL numbers look like and how accurate do you think they are? Do you have a pretty good beat on them?
They're all fake. The number there's actual money, but I don't think any of the numbers are accurate. At least, like you saw Nebraska's AD come out saying Ohio State and Oregon are spending like $23 million in NIL. And it's like, how does he know that? Where is that information coming from? You've got a lot of different places that will give you information, whether it's like if you've got sources at collectives or sources at places like Open Doors, like not necessarily Open Doors, but people in that realm where they can give you figures. But even that stuff is only a fraction of what is actually going on or just a portion. And I think everybody is so protective with their information because it's kind of it's almost proprietary. Like you're not going to give them all of the actual true information. And so I don't know what is it 70% of the numbers being talked about, like whatever the $13 million that people are saying Ohio State is, like when it's coming from the coach, that's one thing. And that's just what he was asking for. I don't know that we know that what they actually got. I do know that players are taken care of, but in terms of, is it 13 million? Is it 23 million? Just any number that you hear, I would say knock it down by, take it down to 60% of that. And maybe that's closer, but that may just be the cynic in me.
If one of the parking lots at the University of Texas is any indication, yes, the players are being taken care of. Steve,
But
anything on this?
I'll say there's always been nice cars in college parking lots. So this isn't new. Now, are they even nicer? Yes, because you're not just seeing the Chargers and things like that, but there have always been nice cars in school parking lots.
As far as NIL, I kind of echo everything that's been said. Somebody was texting me right there in the middle of that exchange about camps and different things. It is, as Tony said, this is something that schools don't want everybody to know their business, what the going rate is for a starting quarterback or a running back or whatever, and to keep the costs down, obviously. But at the same time, they need to promote that we pay top dollar. So it's kind of like, catch as catch can on this whole thing. If you can find somebody reputable that'll tell you what it is, then so be it. But I'm not in the business of reporting. I joked with Jake Diebler the other day. You're becoming the head coach at Ohio State at a time when you're about going to have to be, and this was a funny term. A buddy of mine was doing a fantasy draft one time, and he was asking salary cap questions. And the commissioner was like, we've got a regular Carmen Polonese over here on our hands or whatever. You have to be Carmen Policy now in terms of managing the salary cap. And I joked with Jake Diebler, like, you're going to have to be a part basketball coach, part capologist going forward, when it comes in-house and the coaches determine who gets what out of the pool of money that's available. And he immediately said, whatever happens, I want the mechanism known as the foundation on my side going forward, because they stepped up and they helped him land those 4 transfer portal players that they got for basketball. And I assume they still have their hand a little bit in football, even though I think there were some powers that were trying to nudge them out of the football space because of some different things that happened. But yeah, I just look at it and my dogs are going to go nuts because the mail person just pulled up. But at any rate, I look at it that it's all going to be come out in the wash. I think that the strong schools are going to survive. And Diebler said he thinks Ohio State's going to be in the forefront of college basketball because of NIL. And I would assume that means they're only going to be in the very, very much forefront of football because of NIL.
So we've got Tyler. We appreciate the contribution, sir. Good morning, guys. I have a question. We always talk about the negatives in NIL. What are the positives for the NIL program?
Well, I think it's a positive for the kids who are getting compensated at this point. I mean, it's always been the discussion of is a tuition and room and board, is that all worthy when you're sitting there making a boatload of money for your school, putting yourself at risk or whatever. I think that, this is a chance for, these kids to be fairly compensated at that point. Again, I don't think anybody's ever going to, and I'm not saying that Tyler's trying to get convinced one way or the other, but I think that you're on one side or the other side of the NIL argument, and nobody is defecting from one side to the other side. It's just, they're the people that are like, we've had this collegiate model, this amateur model for all these years, and that's where it needs to stay, and that's just how it has to be. And then the other people are like, we kind of have to evolve or die, because ultimately, if you have a situation of where there's not compensation for the athletes, you're going to have another pipeline start, whether it's like NFL Junior or something like that, and you're going to have a situation, and it's going to bring this whole house of cards tumbling down. So I'm not saying that that's necessarily a positive of keeping the wolves off of the doorstep, but I do think that ultimately the NC2A needed to do something sooner, because it could have done something in a much smaller measure that would have, maybe been easier to regulate, but you done screwed up, and now we're here where we are.
Yeah, when you have NBC, Fox, and CBS all paying the Big Ten $300 million a year to televise games, and you have whatever untold millions, multi-millions of dollars coming in through this new 12-team playoff, you really don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to being able to pay the players. And is the ACC and the Big 12 going to be able to pay the players at the same rate as the Big 10? No, unlikely, because the Big 10, the SEC are going to make top dollar in this space for television. But certainly the year 2024 has finally arrived where the athletes who produce the revenue are going to be able to enjoy some chunk of it beyond just the cost of tuition, room and board, a little bit of cash for living expenses, et cetera. So, yeah, that to me, it's well overdue. These guys have earned the money, and to me, they're going to get to partake in some of it. And the football and men's basketball people have been, making the money for the rowing people, the baseball people, and everybody else to live kind of high on the hog all these years. And now they're going to actually be able to enjoy some of the wealth that comes from their efforts. And it's a 46 or 47 week a year job to play major college football. I mean, you get little to no time off. They took 2 weeks off after the end of the spring semester. And when people on the message boards found that out, they about died. They're like, well, why aren't they working out? Well, because you can't work out year round. I mean, your body's got to rest, your mind's got to rest. And Coach Day said everybody came back in fit and ready to go. So that's how you do it. So at any rate, I'm good with it. I think it's well overdue. I think it's going to be a positive. It's just we are in a position still, and we've been in a position basically from COVID on 4 years ago of this is where we are. This is where we're trying to get to. And right now we're about right here. So we still have a long way to go before this is all shaken out to where we have harmony once again in college athletics, if we ever do achieve true harmony. Of course, that's like saying we're going to get the Republicans and Democrats to agree. There was a note on Congress yesterday. Somebody slipped something into a larger bill.
What?
That college athletes will not be considered W-2 employees. I presume they would be classified as 1099 employees under this federal legislation that is like some overall spending bill. They just kind of slipped that in there that, as a favor to the NCAA and the schools. So somebody got lobbied really, really hard to do that, because I don't know that holds a whole lot of water either. But
I'll say, I'll go with Kevin on this. The positives for the NIL program for NIL is that you now have parents that don't have to. Mom doesn't have to work a second job. The lights stay on. There's a car at home. There's fewer stresses for parents, which means there's fewer stresses for the kids at college putting all this work in. So like that alone is such a benefit. Just the mental stress reduced from that. That is a huge positive. And then the kids, of course, having money in their pocket and being able to do it legally and not have to kind of run around and hope you don't get caught from the $100 handshakes from the rich folks who love football. And so now it keeps everything on the up and up. So just the individual benefits, I think, are huge. I think there's the people that are hurt might be the construction companies that won't be able to build as many buildings on campuses anymore because the money's going to have to go to the players. So, prayers to those folks that they can still keep finding other places to build buildings that nobody's using, and Godspeed to them.
It's been my experience that from all the feedback we get here and in my personal life is that for the most part, it sounded like people wanted these players to be compensated. Once they were compensated, then they want to control how much they personally feel is acceptable. So people are uncomfortable with other people making more money, especially if they're younger or less experienced in life than they do. And that has never been, for the most part of the equation in this society, in our culture as Americans. that you are paid based on the value that you bring as determined by the market. And that's all there is to it. So the people that are watching support the sport. So if you don't want the players to be paid, don't support the sport.
I will say, not to go too off, but then we can get back to talking about Ryan Day. But capitalists, they love their capitalism until they see an 18-year-old making $400,000 a year. Then it becomes an issue.
Yeah, there certainly is a level of either conscious or subconscious jealousy at that point, because you're going out and you're working your job, and by all accounts you're doing a good job and you're making a certain amount, and then you see somebody going out there playing a game, making all of this money, who's 18, 19 years old, and it's like, no, I wanted compensation. I just wanted them to have beer money.
Yeah.
And we skipped over beer money and everything else, and we went into real money. We went into real money with cars and everything else. And I don't know if attitudes are necessarily going to change overnight on it, but I think that one of the big concerns, one of the big frustrations a lot of people have is just the unregulated nature of it, because it just seems so random and haphazard in a lot of ways. But I don't know if we're ever going to see a point of where we're going to have a system that is truly going to be enforceable from school to school.
Well, and it's difficult politically to be against it, because in terms of
because you're
you
a
feel
jerk.
bad. Well, you feel bad for Georgia Southern, who could lose a quarterback after 3 years to another school. And it's like these group of 5 schools can't keep their quarterbacks for 4 years, 5 years. Daquan Finn, Toledo would love to have him, but he goes to Baylor for money, for exposure, that sort of thing. And it's like, gosh, that's too bad that a school can't keep somebody that they found. It's like, well, they can, but they just have to pay him. But you would like to see them stick around, but also if you are saying gosh, if you're saying this is a bad thing, then you're saying that players making money is a bad thing, and that's a bad plank to be out on over the side of a boat if you want to be there.
Speaking to the jealousy side of things, there's one thing to be jealous in your mind and reason it out. It's another thing to be jealous in your heart. Do I have moments of jealousy to say, yeah, this kid's making $500,000? I'm not. Sure, that's human nature.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty acceptable. But my reason takes over to say, if the industry supports it, and as long as it's on the up and up, and again, the industry supports it, the value in the marketplace, and a lot of people like to, at least in the conversations that we have here, a lot of people like to tie value to physical labor. That strikes me as odd, considering in this day and age when most of us not do very much physical labor is connected to our job and the value of our job, that they suddenly want to say that there's physical labor involved. Well, of course, their physical labor is pretty high on the scale as football players, but that there is some type of toil factor that needs to be weighed into it. And again, that has nothing to do with it. How valuable are you? That's pretty much what it comes down to.
And I would venture that every college athlete that is getting NIL money, money enough to make you raise your eyebrow, is doing more physical labor than anybody that is complaining about it.